You've had some experience. So any questions, and you know, this is for you guys, but also as clients, feel free to ask questions as well, because I'm sure they'll be enlightening.
With the sensitive card, so we can take clients back to it to help them to grow their compassion, self-compassionate part.
Well, sensitivity. So, usually, someone's coming with a disturbance. I'm going to say, by definition, the disturbance is going to involve some level of internal insensitivity, because we know that first mechanism, child mechanism, internal override is by definition insensitive, is it not?
Mm.
Now, you have to put that in the brackets of dependent stage of childhood, where a level of insensitivity that keeps you alive is a damn good idea. Yes? But later on, when you're not in a dependent situation, it's just insensitive. They're not going to notice it as that, because it's just going to be their normal. The sensitive card is your view, which is what I'm going to call unconditionally loving, as in, there's nothing you don't understand and you love every single part because it's part of the whole and it's doing exactly what it's meant to be doing. We, the person, and you yourself, which is why we've got cards, can forget. You know, your friend can be saying, "Oh, I'm such an idiot," and no one's going, "What are you calling yourself an idiot for?" In the same way that if someone else came in and said, "Oh, you idiot," you'd go, don't say that to my friend." Do you get it? Can you see the cultural absences and we don't notice? So the cards there, like the reason that you don't want to just be associated is because you can understand stuff, but if you don't bring unconditionalness, if you don't bring sensitivity, that which you would bring to a newborn, an infant, it's not likely to be sustainable. Sensitive card is opposite anger, because it's the anger, criticism, intimidation that's from the insensitive training that gets internalized and gets done internally. Sometimes you have to take the client to the sensitive card because they're going, "Oh, I got slapped yesterday, but I deserved it because, I did the wrong thing." You see, there's no self-reflection of insensitivity. They're just going, "Naughty boy must be punished," and that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
But if you ask them, if they've got a child, if they can imagine a child, and I'm talking an infant, imagine that same slap happening to that infant. And you take them to that and they'll go, "Oh my God." Everybody, and I'm talking murderers in prisons, will go, "Oh my God, no." But what's happened to them after that has completely dissociated them from it. So can you see why it's there? And what you're wanting them to get to is associated, overview, sensitivity, understanding all parts and their part to play, even if their method is insensitive, because you want to work with the insensitivity of the method. You know that the intention of the part is 100% protective. But the person themselves won't necessarily recognise that. And can you see a lot of the time, you won't necessarily recognise that, depending on your own transference and counter-transference in your own backpack and what level of sensitivity you dealt with as a kid. Does that explain why it's there and why If it wasn't there, it wouldn't work sustainably. Any other questions? And the crowd goes mild.
Not a question, but just a struggle and maybe a bit of insight around it. That my struggle with working with the cards in the sense from like, you know, when should I move? I was able to do in some instances, but in some instances I noticed myself getting lost in the context of what was going on. So
yeah, and basically that's practice. But the more that you have the structure of what you're looking for, the more, you know, and this can only happen when you've done your own practice of spending a day, a week, a month, naming behaviours, either on television, in your own life, as it's happening inside you, because you probably won't get enough practice just with your clients, because you're busy doing what you're doing while you're with them, whereas you want to know, oh, internal criticism, oh, external criticism, oh, passive aggression, oh, self-distraction. And you could just watch any Netflix program and just go, oh, adolescent mechanism, adult override of adolescent, child, self-distraction, suicidality. So that you just bada bing, bada bang, bada boom. When it comes to following signals for the cards, I mean, people pretty much tell you. When you're listening to the sentence, you want to be going, which card are they talking about? Now, are they going to tell you the way you want to hear it? No. And that'll happen with practice. But, you know, you did the work, you got results. And one down. Do you know what I mean? And it's just, you're not meant to be instantly good at it. But if you can be in the same place that your client is, which is, I don't know, but I want to know. Now, of course it's hard because as a counsellor you want to pretend that you know and they don't. And you're going to pull the rabbit out of the hat for them. But you want to become a co-researcher. You want to be curious about what's going on, even if it's not linear, even if it's not what it's meant to look like. You're not even always necessarily going to use this, but you still want to have it as structure in the background for when it comes up. But at the same token, when you know that underneath everything there's going to be intimidation overriding expression into paralysis popping out compliance, then all you have to do is go from wherever they are to that. And you're going to notice all sorts of dissociative mechanisms and all sorts of other things on the way. And there might be heaps of things that you need to work with before you get there. And I mean, for the extreme dissociators, you're not even going to get to ground zero until you're like 6 months to a year in. But that doesn't mean you're not doing the maths relative to their mechanisms that they can't get to, so that when you're there, you're not starting then. You're starting from, do you remember what you said on the first session? Because you're going, I know what that mechanism is. In the same way that you know the difference between a chair and a table. And that's really useful, because you know you don't necessarily want to sit on the table. Yes? So, welcome to the world of beginners. And we're all beginners, you know. The only reason I'm here doing this is because I was a beginner who knew nothing, and I was curious for 20 years. And I'm still learning. So, If there aren't any questions.
I have another.
Oh, good.
I want
Oh, good.
What do you do when there's a lot of resistance?
There's no such thing as resistance.
There's no such thing as resistance.
Okay?
Okay.
What do you do when there's resistance? You tell me what resistance is.
paralysis.
Maybe. Maybe. It could be paralysis. But can you see that resistance implies what? If you push me,
Yeah.
what do I have to do to resist?
Like
I have to do something.
Yeah.
Which means it's not paralysis.
Okay.
It can look like paralysis because I might not, be going where you want me to go. But, resisting, right? Just think of it in the physical world. Whenever you get caught up in the internal, because it's much harder in the internal consequential because it's not tangible.
Yeah.
But can you hear that every single thing in the external has a corollary internally? So if you're noticing resistance in the internal, right? Go to the external. Go, what's resistance? Well, it's pushing back. So then you get curious. Why might someone want to push back? What's the good reason for pushing back? And I tell you, it's not resistance. The person's come to you asking for help. But what is resistance? By definition, have a look on that poster. All right, you tell me. Absolutely. You tell me this resistant client you're talking about. How do they resist?
By disassociating.
Well, no, I want to actually what they did
What
that
they
you
did.
said that you call resistance.
Like, when I asked you earlier when I was working with that there was no flavor of anger, right? And then
But
you
how is that
kind of-
resistance?
Well, that looked like resistance to me. That
But you tell me what the moment of resistance looks like.
yeah, okay. It looked like that there was anger, but he wasn't able to express
Okay,
or
so
say
I
that
want to
was-
make a distinction here, okay? Because resistant clients, like it's a very common term, I don't agree with it. You've just got two things going on, like every other internal conflict. They're coming into your door, they're sitting on your couch, they're saying, can you help me? So let's go over here. No, we can't. Too bad. Anyway, we know what it looks like. No, it's fine. They're saying, help me. But when you go to help them, parts of them whose job it is to keep them out of the loop so that they don't get overwhelmed by feelings from dependent stage of childhood, come up and do resistance to that. Can you see all they're doing is showing you what methods they used to dissociate, and your job is to catch them,
So,
which you can't do if you think they're just being resistant.
yes, and that's what was happening. So, are you saying that when I'm saying resistance, is actually them showing disassociative mechanism in that case
Absolutely.
was the
Absolutely.
override of
There's
adult
nothing that
mechanism?
isn't part of the process, including that.
Ah.
In the same way, you tell me which part of your body isn't part of your body. So there isn't anything in the process that isn't part of the process. But we're not used to thinking like that. We're going, well, I've got this plan, and you're not colonising yourself to my plan, and therefore you're resistant. And, Tab's question, lying to yourself. It's like, yeah, you want to get really curious why one part's lying to another part. You want to get really curious why there's a resistance to moving in the direction of, the answer to whatever it is. As in, absolute rule of thumb, hello, is there anything about me that I wouldn't want to know? Can you hear that? In the same way, is there any part of your body that you wouldn't want to know about? Can you hear how whole this is? And what do you know? Large proportion of people, they'll even say, when you even ask them that question, you know, yeah, there's stuff I don't want to know. I mean, that's maybe 20%, but 80% will go, no, I want to know. Do they have access to it? No, because there are file clerks whose job it was to make what was overwhelming disappear. That's what they're showing you. And you want to focus on that, not where you're trying to get them. Is that really clear? You want to focus on whatever the signal is in the moment. Forget the coat hanger. You'll get back to that. Don't miss the signal.
That's the thing, yes. I think you get so stuck in the coat hangers that I lost the signals.
And initially that's going to be so. You know, I'm coming to you with 20 years of every day, 5 days a week, for 20 years doing the same thing. And I got to tell you, you know, when I was going through this stuff with people, there was a part of me going, I can't believe I'm saying this again and again and again. What is the purpose of this? You know, oh my God, I'm saying it again. Why am I repeating this stuff, you know? And, you know, I did it until it was clear. And the interesting thing is, you know, when it was clear, I retired. Now I'm teaching you. But you're at the other end where you're just learning. All I can tell you is, you know, the first 20 years of my practice, where I was doing just eclectic talk therapy, I did good work, but I didn't do surgical work. I was never able to get someone like Tab to go from no idea to being able to intervene in an hour, first time. It's miraculous. Do not underestimate it. And don't underestimate where you got to with an exponentially more difficult thing just to do with more dissociation. And you'll get people that are even more than that.
Oh, sure, there's full dissociation.
Absolutely.
Let's check out right there.
Absolutely. And your job is to get curious with that.
Yeah.
And the harder thing is to get them curious.
Yes.
But that's more important. Like, you have to model it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're kind of like, oh shit, what do I do now? It's like that just leaves them out in the cold. Whereas you kind of want to get excited. Oh, we got nothing? Wow. How did we go from something to nothing? Because they started off with something. They said, can you help me? I've got ingrown toenails. And then nothing. And you just went, well. And sometimes take them out of their own seat. Get them to notice where there was something, and then it dropped off the face of the earth. Get them curious about it. Get them to come and have a look at it from your point of view. And can you see, this is miles before you're using cards. Yes? But can you see the mindset where you're fascinated and curious about every single thing that's going on? And getting them as curious as you are. Because then eventually you'll be able to put the information on the coat hangers. But the first thing you might start with is no information. And you can't just say, oh, come along. That's what their parents will have done. So we're ready for more practice?
On the subject of dissociative mechanisms, so we've got resistance, full dissociation, where they're just...
Oh, you want a list of dissociative mechanisms?
Yeah, just like a rough guide.
A rough guide. Well, what would be a list of actions? Because we'll just do visibles and invisibles, actions and non-actions. What's a list of we'll write them down. Dissociative actions.
Walking out.
Yeah. So, dissociation, and we're just splitting it into the inevitable, visible actions, and invisible non-actions. And can you see why we have to kind of create a different vocabulary to be accurate about this stuff? Because we don't have words for them. So come on, what are dissociative actions?
Shouting.
Well, I'm talking about a client,
Yeah.
and it could be, okay, shouting, but it depends what they're shouting.
Yeah, okay.
Smile, laugh when they're talking about
Yeah, mismatches, but, well, okay. I want you to get much more specific. I want you to think about whatever it is that you're calling dissociative mechanisms. And it may be that you're asking because you aren't used to noticing them. And you kind of want a list of, oh, well, I'll look out for that. My reticence about that is because it's like then you'll do it by rote. Whereas I want you to be thinking, you know, spot the difference pictures. I want you to be in the mode of spotting the difference of, because you're either going from present moment disturbance to training disturbance, or dissociative mechanisms are going to be going on. Like, do you remember with Dominique, you start with one moment, then she takes you to the next. So that's one, isn't it? Changing the subject. Really? Try this one in public, it's fabulous. And you'll notice how often it works. And I mean 90% of the time. Someone says to you, how are you? And you just go, how are you? And they'll answer. And they won't say, you didn't answer my question. That's how much you can change the subject. And no one will bat an eyelid. And people have been doing it since they were a kid. Did you do your homework? Did you see that bird that just went past here? And your client, by definition, is going to be a past master at it. Because a part has had to keep them out of the loop. And can you see your job is to first work with the parts whose job it is to keep them out of the loop. So you want to be interested in a sensitive, associated way with the parts who go, fuck off, you're not meant to know this shit. And it's not resistance. They're just telling you exactly what you need to be in relationship with if you're ever going to get to training in a sustainable way. Because if you just get to training because that's the train that you're on, you'll get there, you'll do the work, and this part will just pull the rug out from under it tomorrow. Yes? All right, what are non-actions of dissociation?
Blankness.
Blankness, very good.
What does blankness mean?
Just don't know.
Ask me a question.
Blank.
What does blankness mean?
What was that? Or changing the subject.
Okay.
I mean, you know, I've had clients who for 20 minutes and I'm talking about after I've asked a question. You know, and I have to admit, there was a time that I fell asleep. But you know, when you've got a 2-hour session and that's how long it takes, and you've had a bad night, I'm pleading my case here. It's not your average, but with extreme dissociation, it's like that's how long you have to wait.
Yeah.
And most of the time, or at least some of the time, the end of the 20 minutes, it's not the answer to the question, it's, what was the question? And there's another 20 minutes. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here.
Okay.
You write the list. And if you feel like you won't be able to find anything, watch a program called In Treatment.
Oh, yes.
It's on video. Yes, it's acted, but you watch it and then you'll fill in the blanks. But I don't want you to be looking for these. I want you to be looking for what it is that's stopping the process from going as planned. Now, can you hear that it sounds like I'm trying to get you to go through things as planned? No, I want you to follow the client. The handrail lets you notice when you've hit a sandbar. The sandbar is really important. But if you don't have where you're going, you can't hit the sandbar. If they have their way, they'll ask you about something and then take you everywhere but where it is. Because that's the dissociative part's job. They'll say, get me off crack cocaine. And every time you go to the moment where they're about to use, they'll take you somewhere else. Anywhere other than rehab. Okay. So, I'll just check. Yeah, okay. It's now 3 o'clock, so yeah, we should be able to do 2 more swaps. So how about you and Dominic here, you and Tab there. You've got something else to work on? You got something else to work on?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so I'll stay here, but you just raise your hand, I'll be able to see you.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll move the camera.
Do you want me to put my phone on airplane mode so you don't get those ding-dings on your computer?
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, like it's on silent on my phone, but...
Oh, don't worry about it. There's so much that's not fabulous about.
Do you have a moment of disturbance?
I do.
Or is it like, which one should I pick? There's so many.
So can you guys just come around the cards? Just for the sake of the... Right, Amna, if you could just kind of stand approximately here. Further in, further in, further in, further in, further in, further in, further in. That's perfect. And Dominic, can you... Oh, I need my glasses. You're good.
I'm in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would you like to bring in? The moment of disturbance.
So I was working with one happening this morning and then there was another one happening this morning. So another moment of disturbance, which is when I got up and decided to tidy up around the house. And
So it was today morning?
yeah,
Saturday morning, what time was it?
maybe 10 o'clock.
Mm.
And kind of, I usually enjoy to tidy and have, you know, the house organized and tidy, but I noticed I was getting frustrated with bits and pieces being... I was getting frustrated with bits and pieces being in, you know, I have to always look at them and I don't know what to do with them because they're not mine.
What bits and pieces? So,
Right.
okay.
You know,
So
like...
the bits and pieces are not yours.
Yeah.
Just looking at them were making you frustrated.
Yeah, because it happens a lot. Because there's always my husband.
You're slow.
He likes to do things, and so he uses a lot of things, and he don't always have time or even think about putting them away. And I never know what to do with them. And and sometimes it just gets to me. Sometimes I can forget about it, and sometimes I see all these bits everywhere, and it's annoying.
And so I imagine it was at your home.
Yeah.
In Mauro?
Yeah.
And so there was frustration about it. And did you do anything about the frustration? Did you move this stuff? Did you yell at your husband?
He wasn't there.
Okay. So he wasn't there. So what happened there with the frustration? I just want to know what was happening for you. I mean, I'm imagining it was frustration. You were looking at the pieces, and you don't know what to do with it.
I think there's a frustration because it's like a part of me knows I have to live with that because it's always been like that, and it's hard, it's difficult.
You haven't got the one moment in time. Can you hear that she's talking about years with the husband? What's the moment in time? You started off with this morning, but you want to get where were you? Which thing? What nanosecond was it? And then go to the body. Notice that there's anger. What would the anger try to do to get a sense of what's going on? Already ahead of time, just between you and I.
But
We know she's angry.
No, but what I know, but I do have the time and where she was and.
Then okay,
bits
if
and
you
pieces.
do, get into the body.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
So that you can mine just that moment, because she's talking about, well, he's always like
Okay,
this,
so, okay.
which
Yeah.
is not one moment in
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, so coming back to that very moment where you felt that frustration and also what pieces were there, what was it?
I think it's by the time I got to the lawnmower. So I saw a few things and I know I can't move them, and then I get to the lawnmower and it's like, it's like
So
that.
freeze that one. To find out where she is in relationship to the lawnmower.
So I'm on the deck, outside, and it's, let's say 10 o'clock, I can't remember the time exactly.
Now get it to come and have a look at the body.
And how does that felt in your body at the moment, now that you're not in the triggered moment?
You're going to how she's feeling. The whole purpose of coming back is to see what the body's doing. One of the things is what you mentioned. She could have gone, oh, for God's sake, you let the bloody... That would be an action. Yeah. We know that didn't happen. So the first thing you want to do is get her to see the body, look at the what's his name, and the body's not doing anything. Then you can work on, okay, what's inside. And you already know it done because she's told you she's angry, which is why you want to then get her to go to that part, because there might not be anything going on externally in the external molecular world. In the internal consequential one, there's a volcano going off. And then work out what's going on, which mechanism. Yes? Very good.
Do you want to come to the anger now?
First, take her through looking at the body to notice that the body's not doing anything.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Because it's really important, isn't it?
Mm. So, can you have a look at the body, that the body is not doing anything, whereas you're feeling that frustration, standing at the deck, looking at the lawnmower.
Yeah.
So you're aware of that.
Yeah.
So, would you like to come to the anger? Yeah, what happens for you now when you're there with the anger?
What would that part like to say or do?
Mm.
That's what you want to find out.
What would that part of...
And then how come it didn't? Because the body wasn't doing anything.
Okay. So what would that part like to say?
I'd like to say, why don't you, have a spot for your things and put them there and not spread them everywhere?
And you didn't say anything?
No, because I was alone.
Yes, you were alone, but did you do anything when you weren't alone? Like, was there anything, movement in your body or any expression?
Oh yeah. So I was alone, so I didn't say anything. And yeah, I think that there's a part of me that's frustrated because feels like there's not even a point to say something because it's going to happen again.
Which mechanism do you think that is? That a part that there is anger, but it doesn't say anything because it won't make a difference.
I have to read now. Is it the dissociated one?
Yes, in a way, because there's anger, but it's not being expressed or said anything. Yes, you're alone, but looking at when you were here, if you come from the associated part, do you see anything when you look at your body? Was there any signs of anger there when you were in that moment?
No.
So yes, there was disassociation there. But when I say the mechanism, probably the child mechanism, which is not going to do anything because it's aware it's not going to change anything.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what happens for you when I say that?
Well, it feels like there's nothing to do then.
What's going on for you?
So, yeah, I was getting her to the mechanism, which is the child mechanism, right?
Maybe.
That's what I'm saying.
Let's work with where did you go?
She was at the anger, right?
Yes.
And she said there's no point expressing the anger because it's not going to change.
Which mechanism is that?
And I said child.
Why?
I asked her, she said, is it disassociated? Then I asked her to come back to the association.
Okay. Come back to associated. This is the definitional thing, and it's just practice. Her body is saying nothing. She's not ringing her husband up and going, sick of this fucking lawnmower on the deck. But she's angry, which means that the only override to do with anger is which mechanism?
Yeah.
override of adolescence.
Exactly.
But-
Because if it was a child mechanism, it would just be the override of unique momentary expression.
No, but I was referring the bit where she says there's no point of being angry because it's going to repeat. So I
This is why developed adult, right, who's lived with a husband for so long goes, oh, forget it. There's no point. Don't say it. That's the reason why this part goes, don't rock the boat. It's never going to change. And of course it works because can you see the body doing anything? No. It's not writing a list saying, tell Buck to move his lawnmower when he gets home, move on to the next thing. No, just passive aggression. Fucking bastard. Do you follow? So can you see by definition, and this is just very key for everybody, if there's an override of anger, criticism, intimidation, it's always adult mechanism. Because child mechanism is override of unique momentary expression. If she, wanted to just say, oh sweetheart, can you move your lawnmower? She could just do that, unless there was a part saying, oh no, you can't say that. But this is, I've done this for so many years, and can you hear there's anger criticism? And at any degree of that, and it's adult override of adolescent mechanism, and the way that you tell the difference between the two is any flavour, smell of anger, criticism, temptation, just as a hand wring, so that you kind of know. Yes? And it's important to make this distinction between child mechanism, they're both, and adult mechanism, they're both overrides. One has a flavour of anger, one criticism, intimidation, one doesn't.
Yes. So that was the distinction there.
Yeah. Of course, underneath that, you're eventually going to get her to child mechanism, which is, because first you've got to work out where did these parts learn that from. But, what's the point? There's no point in asking.
So now from anger, and when you're saying that there's no point saying in anything, I move on to the training bit, right?
Well, you get curious about it, yeah.
Yes, So the training, where do you learn that? Where do you think that moment was that when you learned there's no point of telling him that?
Because he knows that I like order, but I also know that he doesn't think about it, so I would need to say. So where did I learn not to say it?
Coming back to, yes, that's happening for you in the present moment. But where in your training from 0 until now you learn that there's no point of asking him, have you asked him to do something or have you communicated and he hasn't done it? So where is that you learned that there's no point saying that to him?
Actually, it's not so much that there's no point saying that to him, it's that I don't want to have to say it to him.
And where does that part come that does not want to say something? Whereas clearly there is a part of you which is angry and frustrated.
So I think my mom was like that. She repressed her anger a lot of the time, and she would maybe think things and you could feel it, but she wouldn't express it.
So can you pinpoint one of the moments while you were growing up that's something that your mom did that made you feel like I shouldn't question it and just let it be?
Because when you said where did you learn that, and I said well, Mom was not saying anything, she would be frustrated or angry and not necessarily express that. And then you asked me when did I learn specifically that I'm not understanding what I'm looking for.
So what I'm saying is that you said that your mom was like that and you picked it from her as she was modeling that and not saying something. So I'm asking, could you pinpoint a specific moment where, what did she model that you picked up? What was she doing that you picked up? What was she not saying that you picked up?
It's another one of those doesn't exist thing.
Don't ever get away with saying that without getting curious. See this reaction here? So, if something doesn't exist, that's like the biggest dog's ball absence, isn't it?
Yes.
In other words, you're going along the way, everything's fine, and then all of a sudden the plug's pulled out. Help her get curious as to why all of a sudden nothing doesn't exist. And if you need to, help her get a police identikit of what's likely to have happened. That she goes, yeah, that definitely happened. Because that will help her find one. The amount of times people, while they're doing the identikit, find the actual one.
As you say that, your mum won't say anything and be quiet about something that disturbs her. What I'm imagining is that maybe there was something that you would do as a child or when you were with her growing up that she would go quiet, where you do had an understanding that, I haven't done so and so because my mum don't like it. And she's not saying it directly to you, but you have a sense of that. That could it be? Does that resonate for you?
No, actually, I think I picked it up from her being frustrated with Dad and not expressing that with him. I think because...
Can you remember one moment? Like, what was that specific moment that when your mum was, frustrated with that?
It's funny because I remember the moments where she actually would finally get angry a few times, but I remember feeling that she wasn't expressing some of her anger.
How about you just narrate whatever that moment is, because I'm not sure what moment was. So maybe if you can help me through what was happening, what did Dad do, what did Mum do, and just take it on from there. And where were you in that picture?
So I remember once she made soup and we were eating at the table and Dad said, it's really nice soup, it's just not very, it doesn't have enough salt. It's funny, the details, you remember? And she didn't say anything, and eventually she got up and just picked everybody's soup and threw all the soup in the sink.
Do you notice your smile as you tell me that?
Yeah, because I think it was funny.
How old were you?
Probably 10. About 10, maybe 11.
And do you find that funny as a child as well? Were you laughing back then as well?
No.
Then can you help me what was happening for you then?
I think Dad was smiling, but it's like in French we say it's a yellow smile. It's like you smile, but it's, but I don't remember. I think I felt like it was an overreaction, and that she could have, if she just said something, it would have been better than to throw the soup away.
When you hear the word overreaction, what does it imply?
That something wasn't needed but was there, or it was more than what was required.
Well, there's two things, aren't there? There's just what the reaction was, what the mum does, and then a cultural thing that says, oh, that's too much and that's too little and that's just right. And that's what you're being told, two things. And all we know is that there's a relationship to it. So you would want to get curious and help her get curious about whether we call it an overreaction or an underreaction or a just right reaction. What's it there for? So I would suggest go to the moment, and because it's a modelling moment, get her to be the mum in the moment throwing the soup, in order that she understands what's trying to happen there, and then she'll start to see that it's not about over or under, it's just a mechanism happening. Because what do we know ahead of time the mechanism is when the mum's throwing the soup? Absolutely. And what do we know is underneath adolescent? Child. So let's find out what the throwing the soup's about, because I can guarantee you there's many, many moments of not throwing the soup, and that's a different mechanism. Which mechanism is it before she throws the soup? Do you think she's just momentarily angry, or she's been angry for a while and eventually she throws the soup? So which mechanism is it before? Adult, overriding it, and then eventually oh no, fuck this, Now can you see which do you reckon is kind of on a certain level more important? The one moment that she throws the soup, or all the millions of moments that she has an internal override to not? And what is it that you know is underneath, which is child mechanism? What is she really sad about? Because she can't grieve what she can't change. Okay, is that enough to kind of mine? Go mine.
She can't grieve. What is it that she can't change?
What do you tell me?